Hi, Alexis.
Hello, Rachel. How are you?
I am doing really well, thank you. How are you doing?
I am very refreshed for today's practice. Excuse me while I just clear that screen. Yes, we have had a practice group, our monthly practice group this morning, and we'd like to just review some of the practices that we did this morning. So those of you who attended, this will be an opportunity to review. And those of you who are coming on the retreat, this will be an opportunity to prepare. So in the
And if you didn't come on the practice group or the retreat, this is just some juicy new content.
entirely, yes. And the 5 questions that Dr. Rachel posed for us today are in the description above. So if you have a pen and paper handy, it would be constructive to work through those, because for those of us who attended today, it was an opportunity to slow down an emotional trigger and discover more creative ways to respond rather than habitually react. Is that anything you'd like to add to that, Rachel?
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of putting it. The exercise was called Anger and Your Demands. And the focus is a recognition that whether we realize it or not, all of us demand that life, at least some of the time, we demand energetically, at least unconsciously, that, life be on our terms, whereas life is on life's terms, as we all know. Byron Katie, who some people may have heard of, talks about being at war with reality. I think we all know what it feels like to be at war with reality. We feel powerless and angry, exasperated or exhausted or something else. And so the purpose of the 5 questions that you've shared in the overview above is to kind of really examine the internal causes of our anger and frustration. So yeah, I'd love you to summarize what or our group's experience was of that this morning.
Yes. So listeners, if you would like to bring to mind a specific situation in which you were triggered and experienced anger, frustration, resentment, disappointment, then you'll have a chance to flow through that. Yeah, I love that you introduced that Byron Katie point about struggling. It's really a struggle with the reality of life. And the demand, as I've since come to realize, is more than just an explicit demand, an explicit, parent making a demand of the child to tidy the room, but a much more energetic experience, which since this morning has registered for me that I think I operate quite heavily from a place of expectation that the life will go according to my plan and that others will slot in with my intention. And as you have introduced to us, Rachel, NVC advocates for making requests, which allows me to work within my sphere of influence, but then respect that you can work within your sphere of influence and that there is potential for meeting mutual needs rather than imposing my worldview or my opinions or my needs solely at the expense of somebody else's. So that's my understanding of the difference between living a life of demand and then the ultimate struggle versus bringing requests. And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this, Rachel, in a deeper way than we even touched on this morning, because I know you've been living NVC for, is it a decade? Is it more?
16 years ago, I came across NVC.
Yeah.
And I still am learning about it, and I'm still pondering and applying and refining and forgetting and remembering all the time.
Hence the practice group. May I ask you, Rachel, how the requests has shifted your experience of relationship and how it's shifted things for you versus the demand?
Yeah, well, I liked some of the things you said, and what it made me think of is the fixed mindset that's so easy to fall into about how things should be. We're really talking about our should thinking here. And, when we first learned cognitive behavior therapy as very early career psychologists, and you learn the thinking traps or the cognitive distortion, this is so funny to me now, when you learn CBT, which is like the first therapy they teach therapists usually, well, psychologists anyway, you learn these thinking traps, and you read about it, right? You read about it and you think it's what other people do. You think it's what your clients will do, but like no one says you do this all the time and you don't realize it, and whether we actually have the word should in our consciousness, or a rhetorical question like, oh, why would he do that? We do expect that other people will think like we think, and we want people to behave the way we want. And it's even funny, like someone said it today at our practice group, we think, we hope or expect that other people will know how we feel or what our needs are, even though sometimes we haven't stopped to really identify what our needs are. Somehow other people should know what to do and what we need. And this is the beautiful tragedy of being human. And for me, I guess learning the energetic of requests, it really just opens you up to life on life's terms. But it invites you to have agency. It still invites you to ask for what you want and to formulate a request. And there's such a skill in formulating a request, because there's such a skill in knowing what I need, and there's such a skill in knowing how to use my feelings to identify what I need, and there's such a skill in kind of making sure I'm basing it on reality and observations. But the skill of making a request puts the onus on me to think creatively about what maybe I could do or what someone else could do to support myself in some way. And that's quite different from should, or why don't they, or why can't they, or if only they, all this arguing with reality, as Byron Katie says. And I guess for me, it's just opened my mind and allowed me to stay a bit more flexible mentally and open to, not knowing what I'm going to get, but trying to know what it is that I would like. And then when the demands come into my consciousness, and for me, it's all should thinking, or why don't they? Or why would he? Now I have an antidote. Now I have a tool through NVC to dive underneath the automatic survival fight. It's a fight response, really. Demands are a fight response, which is understandable survival stuff, but it doesn't work. One of the questions in the process, number 4, is, how's that working? Is it working when you think like this or when you speak like this? I hope that most people answered no, not really. That was the point of that question.
That's it. So once you have a trigger in your mind, the next question, as you can read there, is what demands are you making of life, which, as Rachel has introduced, in what way are you saying should? And today we all came up with sayings like, you should see how this is good for you. I mean, it's occurring to me that advice is a subtle form of a demand.
Yes.
He should or she should. Again, it's occurring to me that blame is a subtle form of a demand. If I'm blaming you, I'm expecting that you are going to change.
Yeah, good point. Yes.
Yeah. And then I love the third question, what needs are you trying to meet? And I can't be bathed enough in the needs. And I love that you keep bringing to the group, Rachel, that the beauty of the needs, just even that saying alone reminds me that, yeah, there's something really vital underneath this feeling. As was mentioned in the group today, there was talk of validating our feelings and therefore our needs. So is it, wow, okay. So In fact, some of the needs that came up even in our diet, Rachel, were around safety and security and respect. I mean, sometimes, especially if it's quite an immediate and hyperreactive trigger,
Yeah.
for me, that's usually something really quite deep, like safety and security, belonging, all of that really base level.
What some psychologists call attachment needs, as opposed to like meaning and purpose needs. Our attachment needs, which are around security, safety, belonging, connection, love, affection. These are the first needs that we're born with. We're not born with needs for purpose and meaning. That comes later, but we are born with needs around attachment. So they're our first set of needs that we come into the world with. So I think you're right often. And so I might just give my example, and then you could perhaps quickly give your example, and that shows people how to apply the 5 questions. What do you think?
Absolutely. It's a great idea. Yep.
So my example from today, the trigger that I worked with as we briefly did the process was being realizing that I'd been lied to. The moment that I chose, a very specific situation in my mind was as soon as I realized that somebody I care about had told me a lie. Now, the demands I was making is this person shouldn't lie to me. This person should trust or love me enough not to lie to me. And the other thought I had was this person shouldn't be living out of fear, because that was my judgment of this person. So they were my silent demands, my shoulds. Now the needs, question 3, the needs I was trying to meet by making this demand are needs around trust, needs around security, and around respect. So they're all attachment needs. And was it working for me to have my head full of these judgments and shoulds? No. In fact, it was leaving me anxious, angry, powerless. So no. And the final question was, what else might you do instead to support your needs? And I think I said to you, I could write down, meditate, journal, and journal about those needs. And, even little things like turn off my phone, put it on flight mode, because I was very tempted to communicate with this person in a way that wasn't skillful. So when I looked at that final question, I thought there's quite a few things I could do or could have done to support my needs rather than getting stuck in my should thinking. So a simple process, 5 simple questions, but definitely a helpful reflection to help us slow down and unpack our anger response.
Yeah, I love that story, Rachel, and it's occurring to me as you're speaking that you by asking how you could support your needs, you're making a request of yourself.
Yes.
So, and there's the self-compassion, right? There's the self-compassion. Okay, I'm valuing my own experience, my feelings and needs enough that I'm worth slowing this down and giving it. I mean, reality is if you were going to flow through this, you could do it within 2 minutes, right? With the potential to turn a trigger that might be showing up again and again and again in an overreactive way, the potential there to actually create quite a different story for ourselves and therefore the relationship.
Yes, a different story, and a story based around yourself and what you're telling yourself and what your genuine, legitimate needs are, which is quite a different conversation to be having with yourself. And I would also say, since we've provided the 5 questions here, write your answers down. There's something very powerful about, you might not think so when you start out, but once you've finished the exercise, having written your answers and then rereading them and maybe reading them a second time, it's more powerful to see it written down. That's my experience. Do you find that?
Definitely, and verbalizing it with a trusted friend, but writing it down, I agree. So my example, and you know, the beauty of hearing other stories without the content is that, as we discussed after class, that the story, there seems to be very similar. It's almost like this skeleton of an anger story that seems to play out for all of us. So I really related to yours too, Rachel. But the trigger for me was I made a request in a conversation to set a timer, and it was very unskilled because this person was sharing some pretty strong emotion, and I just said, would you mind if we set a timer? So there was a lot of emotion in the room, and my request was met with a no, and and I had an overreaction, which indicated to me that I was making a demand. I had expected, you know, I had all these kind of rules in my head. So we're in my house. It's on my territory. We've already made this agreement. And I kind of just hung all this weight and justification on my reaction. And so today, the opportunity to slow down reminded me that there, underneath that, the feeling of anger, and it was a strong, very defensive anger. You know, enough to really be quite destructive potentially. Was the need for safety and security, and respect. So just even the question of how could I more creatively meet those needs reminded me that I can ground, that I can use, well, at the moment I've been really valuing architecture around me to ground myself, whether that's bearing down into a surface that I'm in contact with, or even placing a hand on a surface. And again, I think the value there is anchoring and bringing me into my body and slowing me down and putting me, well, it facilitates what is that? Yeah, it's a more powerful position rather than reacting. So the way that I was doing it was not working. And I'm looking forward now to the next opportunity to practice, to see how that has been shifted, you know, in the body, in the bodily response. Yeah.
I love hearing you say you're looking forward to the next time you're triggered. That's a very Byron Katie thing as well. I look forward to this person doing this thing again and feeling angry again. I look forward to this so that I can practice.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'll report back.
I'm just looking at the comments, and the lovely Shrishti has asked, she said, I like the video, Rachel, where can I read more about the hierarchy of needs that equates to our stages of life? Makes sense. So Shrishti, I guess I'm thinking of Erik Erikson's stages, and you know, if you just Google Erik Erikson, if you're not already familiar with his theory of human development, it's a needs-based model of human development. You and I have talked about it a lot, Alexis. And the first stage is trust versus mistrust, which is really that basic stuff around security, safety, connection, because trust is based on those needs. And as it goes through the lifespan with the different stages in Erikson's model, we come up against things like initiative versus defectiveness and mastery and belonging, and right through to adult development, where we talk about purpose and generativity and identity. And so these more higher order needs in Erikson's model tell us that, you know, as we move through life from birth, we individuate, we become more a separate self, and then our needs around identity and meaning and purpose come forward. But in those early days and years, it really is about trust, security, safety, and attachment. And so many of us in those first 5 years of life experience some kind of relational shock, even if it wasn't trauma. It could just be the shock of a sibling being born. Or I've worked with lots of clients who have a sibling with a disability, and they didn't realize, but they experienced a kind of emotional neglect as a result, and certainly not what their parents intended for them. But you know, it left them with certain types of specific insecurities or attachment injuries that they are now working on in adulthood, to their credit. And just having the language, NVC gives us the language to be able to even talk about, you know, more than any other model. And I've learned so many models in psychology, but NVC's the best one I've found so far for making our needs vocabulary so explicit, and it's so iterative. We just keep coming back to our psychological as well as physical needs, such that we practice so much that the words just, as you like to say, we get our mouth around it. And then we can, you know, have conversations about our needs instead of our shoulds. It's such a different way to live.
Well, it's so much more effective.
Yeah.
So it saves time.
You know, I'll give you a quick example of how this saves time. And this is anger and demands, the very focus of our discussion today. Many years ago, it was 2009, I think, I was working in the city as a psychologist in a team. And we had a contractor who had mucked up some paperwork, and I can't remember the detail. What I remember is my boss coming in from behind me. He was standing over the top of me, and I criticized this colleague of mine, this contractor. And I said, she's done this and she shouldn't have done this, and what she should have done, and we shouldn't employ her anymore. And I was really cranky. And the first thing out of my boss, I really liked my boss. First thing out of his mouth was, what is needed? What is needed now?
Great line.
What do we need to do now? What do you need from me? Like 2 or 3 sentences, all with the word need in it. And it just shocked me out of my should thinking immediately. He didn't know NVC, but he was a good psychologist. And immediately I was challenged to kind of go, oh, well, what I think our team needs and what I think I need and what I think she needs. And it was so much more efficient and effective, like you say.
Yeah, maybe we should not be asking, how are you, but what do you need? You know, pop down the shops. What do you need today? You know, what do you need? What do you need? I'm wondering whether we can do that.
And it's okay for the answer to be, I'm not really quite sure at the moment. So often it's difficult. There's nuance and granularity to our needs. And NVC has given me the granularity, you know, so, oh, is it this or is it that? Underneath connection, I think it's about support, and maybe there's a need for reassurance. And, you know, so we can, you know, get into the finer details of our needs once we have the language and once we've practiced. So here's a practice for everyone today, the 5 questions. Next time you are triggered into anger, frustration, resentment, or something else, try these 5 questions.
I really like this topic. I'm really glad that we brought this to the table. And thank you, Libby, for posting. She's just posted Ericsson's stages. And Tristy, thank you for tuning in. The other link that I was interested to post after today's group, which we had a great turnout and a really focused, calm session.
20 of us. 20.
Yeah. We were missing a few of our seminal members, but hopefully we'll see you next month. But you mentioned you did a reading, Rachel, and if you wouldn't mind, or even just letting me know where I could find the link about the essay on anger.
Yes, if you go to the Yoga and Psychology Facebook group, which is our Facebook group, anyone listening can join that. I posted it. That's the most recent.
Thank you. Beautiful.
So if you want to post it in the comments below this as well, that'd be great.
Well, that's all I wanted to touch off on. How about you, Rachel? Anything else to add?
Just that we'll have one more practice group at least the end of November, the last Sunday in November, if people would like to come. And I believe there's at least one spot left on our retreat in November, 18 to 22 November on Stradbroke Island. Yeah. So if you're on the comments later, Alexis, would you post a link to that retreat in case people can sign up? I know it's a bit last minute, but you never know.
Yes, and the price does go up tomorrow. So if you are sitting on the fence, I encourage you just to jump in, because it bumps up as we get closer. And we're only a couple of weeks away now. So we'll be on beautiful Stradbroke Island, immersed in nonviolent communication and meditation predominantly. We look forward to seeing many of you there, and I'll look forward to seeing you also, Dr. Rachel. We're going to have our live stream will be happening when we're on the island. So thank you for joining, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yes, thanks everyone. Thanks, Alexis.
Okay, ciao guys. Bye.